Go. We're getting there. Hi, everyone. This is Allison with the Gallatin County Democrats. It's a busy week, friends, but we are so lucky to have Representative Ed Stafman with us tonight to give an update. You've been kind of busy this week, right?
So yeah, this is the week. So next week is called transmittal. So every bill that is filed in the House has to have a hearing by the end of this week so that it could reach the floor if it passes the beginning of next week and be transmitted by the end of next week. And the Senate has got the same thing going on, it's just in reverse.
Right.
And so what happens is normally a heavy day in the Judiciary Committee would be, very heavy day would be 7 bills that we have to have hearings on. This week we had between 16 and 21 hearings every day. Not only did it have to start at 7 a.m., which normally ends at noon, it went to 1 and then started up again at 3 and went into the evening. And even though I'm on another committee that meets at 3 to 5, I just had to choose which committee to go to and get people to cover for me on the other one. And there's just so few Democrats, we don't have enough people to ban the and woman all the committees.
Right. So I think I've heard this week described as Hell Week, like because of just how many bills are being heard, hundreds of bills in all the committees and on the floors. So what are some, like, have you had any bills this week that have had a hearing?
So I had 3 bills, all of which had hearings this week in Judiciary. Okay. I mean, I've had other bills before that, right? Mm-hmm. I've had a total of 7 bills that I filed this session. But the 3 that had hearings in Judiciary were all this week. Even though some of them had been filed weeks ago, they kept on being delayed so that Republican bills that they favored would jump them. Sure. So I was actually set for a week ago Tuesday on my bill to abolish the death penalty, but it got replaced by Caleb Hinkle's bill to declare a fertilized egg a full person with equal rights to a full person. Then that went on for hours with just these people coming in to talk, just regular people who insist that a fertilized egg is a full person. And so my bill got delayed and delayed. So I had 3 bills this week. And just to give you an idea, in each case, I was told at roughly 3:30 in the afternoon that my bill would be heard the next day. People have until 5 o'clock to sign up to testify. That means I have to reach them and they have to check their email and then they have to sign up. And if they don't, so at each of my bills, less than half of the witnesses I anticipated were actually able to sign up.
Sure.
And then the hearing starts at 7, but all the hearings start at 7. So yesterday, for example, my bill wasn't heard till 4. And people waited around from online, had to wait from 7 to 4. And then one of my witnesses, who was an elderly Native woman, showed up after waiting from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And she showed up on Zoom. And she had you can't be live on Zoom. I mean, you can't have your video on.
Right.
And so she had an image on her screen. And you're not allowed to have an image. So every other witness had been told in the past, had been told in the future, please know that we don't allow images. But she was told to take down her image, and she's an elderly woman and didn't know how to do that. And when she couldn't, they wouldn't let her testify after she waited for 9 hours. And ironically, it was a bill about equal rights for Native Americans.
Of course it was.
And so I had my hearing and had about half the witnesses I anticipated. As it worked out, I got to say most of what I wanted to say through the witnesses. And then I get 3 minutes to make my case. And then they table it, which they there's been very few Democratic bills that have passed.
Yeah.
And when they have, they've been really tiny things
Right.
that, nothing, no big policy things. I mean,
Right.
very small little incremental changes that are good, but are not at all, aren't earth shattering.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. And it's not just the politics and the substance, but it's how we're treated unfairly in the process.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch a lot of hearings, but I have watched some, and I've heard of other hearings and how disrespectful certain people are treating others. And yeah, it's not okay. None of it's okay.
And and we just don't have a voice. With there's 33 of us, out of 100.
Yeah.
And out of those 33, there's a few that are kind of not really so much part of the caucus. They kind of are, you might say, independents.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's really only about 30.
Mm-hmm.
And even though those independents almost always vote with us, but they don't necessarily participate in our planning and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only 30 out of 100, and we have to use that very strategically.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday was a good example of how we did use it strategically.
Okay.
So there was a bill on the floor that would have made all judicial elections of district court judges and Supreme Court judges partisan. The Republicans were split. They all wanted the Supreme Court judges to be partisan, but they were split about whether district court judges should be partisan, because the district court judges and the Supreme Court judges both hate the idea. And the district court judges were lobbying them. And some of the Republicans were open to not including district court judges, and others were not.
Okay.
So the first thing that happened as this bill came up was an amendment brought by some Republicans to strip out the district court judges and leave it just the Supreme Court judges.
Okay.
That would become partisan. We voted with the far right, and the amendment did not get stripped out.
Nice.
And then it came with, so it was up for a vote that it was all the judges. Either, there was no choice. You had to either take the Supreme Court or and the district court, or nothing at all. But this time we voted with the moderates, and by 56 to 44, I think, we defeated the bill.
Brilliant.
But now they're refiling it.
Of course they are.
which is, and we did and we committed Jerry on 9 vote. But they're not going to give up.
No.
Right. And so that's one example of how we did use our limited ability to do something effectively. Mm-hmm. Another example was House Bill 113, which was the anti-trans bill.
Right.
That prevented medical care for trans kids, which we defeated by 1 or 2 votes in the House. And they brought it again, except this time it was only surgery that's prohibited, not other treatments.
Right.
It's not that important, because there's no doctor in Montana that actually performs those surgeries. Mm-hmm. So its only real intent is to stigmatize trans kids.
Right. It's still discrimination. It
has no real effect in terms of it. Well, it has 2 effects. One is it stigmatizes trans kids, and the other, because it imposes severe penalties on doctors who do this work, makes it impossible to recruit pediatric specialists to Montana, as that was the testimony of all the doctors, that that pediatric specialists are hard to come by, and when they see this kind of stuff, they won't come to Montana. So that was the 2 effects. So they brought it back, and they did pass it this time. Just, it doesn't actually affect a single thing in terms of actual practice. What it does do is stigmatize trans kids and prevent us from getting good doctors.
Right.
So we beat it once. This is in some ways better than the first version, but that's what we're relegated to, is, just sort of tearing around the edges of some really bad things. And there's only a few things we're even able to tear around the edges of.
Right. Yeah. So what, like there's 4 or 5 more days before transmittal. What bills are you going to be trying to stop or trying to get through in the next few days?
Well, it's hard to know that.
Yeah.
Most of them have been heard in committee and stuff, and I only know about my committees.
Right.
At 7:00 tonight, we'll have a meeting of the whole caucus where each committee will share their stuff. So then I'll know more about what's happening in other committees.
Mm-hmm.
I know one thing, most of the hearings are done. Tomorrow is going to be, I think tomorrow and Saturday, the last day for hearings, and there's only some stragglers left.
Okay.
To be heard. One of them I know that's coming tomorrow is a bill on assisted suicide.
Okay.
Right to die kind of stuff. That's going to be controversial. I have no idea how that's going to look. I think so. And then what happens, of course, is we hand everything to the Senate. The Senate hands everything to us, and then we first have so we have to see all the Senate bills. And since I work every day from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m, on just the House bills, I haven't had time to see very many Senate bills yet.
Yeah.
I know one that will be coming that I will work very hard against is a bill that allows discrimination on the basis of if your religious views mandated. It passed the Senate, and it's coming our way.
Yeah, that's SB 215.
Okay, hasn't got here yet, but it will be.
Yep.
And its basic premise is that you can discriminate against anybody you want in employment and housing, anything, so long as it's based on your sincerely held religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been. I mean, we knew that this session was going to be bad. We knew, like, after the election and with how many, seats the Democrats lost and how, the supermajority that was happening and, with the Republican governor, I think I am still so surprised that almost all of the bills that I see coming through that Republicans are sponsoring are about discrimination or limiting access to voting rights or all these things. Like, I haven't seen anything that actually helps anyone in Montana other than the wealthy. Like,
I haven't even seen anything that helps the wealthy yet. I mean, that's probably coming.
Those are the Senate tax bills.
But so far, all we've seen are right-wing talking points. And
right.
I mean, I can tell you just today, for example, I think it was today, there was a speech on the floor by one of the far-right Republicans. Oh, it was on the trans bill. Or it was on the vaccine bill, one or the other. And I'm there texting with one of the most prominent doctors in Montana. And they're saying things like, well, I did the research on this. These are people who maybe passed high school science, and they're talking about the research they did on complex medical issues.
Sure.
And the doctor's saying, none of this stuff is true. It's just made up. And the only place they could have seen it is on one of these far-right websites.
Yeah.
And they talk about it as if it's like true. They make up diseases.
Yeah.
So one of the examples given was a made up disease of somebody who wants to be paralyzed. Right? It has a name, but it's made up. And so they said, if this was brought up in the trans bill, that if somebody comes to you and wants to be paralyzed, as a doctor, you should not paralyze them, even though they have this disease that says they want to be paralyzed. And they compared that to a doctor performing surgery on a trans kid who wants to, because they say that's a disease. And so it would be unethical to perform surgery for a disease in the same way it would be unethical to turn somebody into into a quadriplegic because they have some kind of disease that makes them want to be a quadriplegic. And the doctor is texting me and says, there's no such disease. They just make it up.
You just make it up as they go.
And then there was on the vaccine bill, there was one of the vaccine bills today said, in those places where you're required to be vaccinated, like in schools, instead of a vaccine, you can get some kind of therapy that I can't remember the name of. But it's never been tested. It's just a made up thing. And they wanted to allow you to use that instead of a vaccine. And the doctor says, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. But you can't, I'm telling you, this is not like a world of reality.
Yeah.
It is, it's their reality. And they are, I'll tell you the thing I've learned most is, and Alice, and we shared this before we got on live, is that we think in Bozeman that we're normal. And we're not. We live in a bubble and we're in our own echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so different from the vast majority of the state. Mm-hmm. Missoula and some of Helena are also in the bubble, right? Mm-hmm. But they have such a different narrative. And I can give you an example of that. So there was a bill that came up on the floor yesterday about landlords. So there's many, many bills that elevate the rights of landlords over tenants. And what they're doing is that, in fact, their overall strategy is they've taken every bill they've passed in the last 16 years that has been vetoed by Governor Bullock, of which there are hundreds, and they're passing them.
Right. So
many of them are bills that shift the balance in favor of landlords. So there was one that says, normally what happens if you do get evicted because you couldn't pay your rent or whatever reason, mm-hmm. The judge is can issue a writ to actually kick you out of the apartment. But let's say the day that's supposed to happen, your spouse died, or it's Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. The judge can give you a couple of days, mm-hmm. right? This bill changes it so that the judge has no discretion and that law enforcement is required to drop everything else they have and immediately go get you and throw you out. Now, when I argued that that's not compassionate,
right,
it made no difference because from their point of view, it wasn't compassionate to not give the landlord back his property, right, after the lease was breached.
Right.
And so it's like two whole different understandings of what it means to be compassionate.
Yeah.
And mostly their idea of compassion is fiscal.
Right. Right. Yep. The money. Yeah.
And and of course the other thing we see is a lot of self-dealing. Mm-hmm. So one of the big bills was, brought by a vape shop owner. Mm-hmm. Now we're going back a few weeks, right? But we had literally hundreds of medical professionals come in to say how dangerous this was. And on the other side was nobody but the vape shop owners. And the bill passed, which took away the power from local governments to regulate vape shops. And it's such a dangerous, dangerous thing, but it's money.
Yeah.
And of course, then the other thing we had this week or last, I don't remember, was dismantling our public health departments. So I don't think people are really understanding what's in Jed Hinkle's bill that passed. I don't know if it'll pass in the Senate, but it essentially takes away from public health departments the ability to regulate in any way any communicable disease or any sanitation condition.
Okay.
So if, for example, a restaurant was serving food that had, some kind of bacteria, the health department would be powerless to do anything about it because freedom,
Right, because public health.
Liberty.
Freedom and liberty. Yeah.
And the other thing I discovered is, in Gallatin County, we have 9 House members, 5 Dems, 4 Republicans. Mm-hmm. My hope was that 1 or 2 of those Republicans would lean moderate. Mm-hmm. as it's turned out, all of them those four are probably among the 10 most right wing in the legislature. Maybe the four most right. No, not probably but certainly within the 10 most extreme.
Right. Yeah.
So
well,
we have some work to do in Gallatin County, friends.
we do so much work. And, if anyone is interested in making these four Republican representatives one-term representatives, reach out to us, because we would like to support any future candidate who is interested in running for these House districts that are occupied by these radical Republicans. And
I've been telling people when they want to talk about this policy or that policy that, as I said at the start, we have the ability occasionally to tear a little piece off of these policies that are coming, but we really don't have the ability to do very much. And that where most of our efforts need to go is in winning back those 4 seats. Or we never winning them back. We never had them, but at least one of them is winnable, and maybe more. And I'm going to tell you now. I mean, last time we had people who, on the day before filing, decided to run, and I ran a year and a half before the election is when I started running, and we're not going to win unless by this summer we have candidates. Right. That's the deadline. The serious deadline is this summer. Even though you don't actually file until February. Right. Because if you're not going to do the work of fundraising and preparing, we're not going to win those seats. And we should be putting a lot more energy in that than trying to defeat these bills, because we're not going to defeat them. We'll do our best, but we're limited in what we can do.
Absolutely. I was speaking with someone earlier today, that really what we're trying to do right now during the session, at least from like our perspective as the, Gallatin Dems, is raising awareness on what's happening during the session, calling attention to these terrible bills and these bad policies that are going to really change Montana, so that we know that this is why we, work so hard during the elections, and why we want, candidates for every office up and down the ballot to run, as a Democrat, and why these things matter so much is because what's happening right now, the bills that are passing and that will be signed into law will change Montana, and not in a good way. And so
there are radical changes on the horizon.
Yeah, and they will impact a lot of people in really bad ways. And like we're recording those, we're documenting it, making sure that we have the tools to hold these legislators accountable for their bad bills and bad votes that happen, right now. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing, and bringing this up, because it is something that we need to be working on, and you're totally right. Last question before, so that you can get and have a break before your next meeting. What are you going to do over transmittal so that you can kind of you get a break? What are you going to do with that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure when the break starts. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday, and it's only until the following Monday. So it's about 5 days. I hope I can get a reservation at Bridger to ski.
Good.
and that it's not, and that it's within that that 20-degree range, so that it's good skiing, and there's some powder. That's what I'd love to do. But I tell you what, it's so intense that it's hard to, even when you're not in session, it's hard not to be totally obsessed. It's for 2 reasons. One is it's intense, and the other is it's shocking to the system, because you couldn't have known that there are people with these worldviews. Right. I mean, so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm constantly trying. There's some legislators who constantly try to draw me into their narrative that the presidential election was stolen. They believe that. And well, that Antifa is the terrorist organization we need to be worried about, even though the Department of Homeland Security says it's the right-wing groups.
Right. Right.
So, so you've got to just not let them engage you, because there's no way you can't win an argument with people who live in an alternative universe.
Yeah.
Fueled by QAnon and the like. I mean, and that is the great majority. And the moderate Republicans are only a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. Only a little bit. Well, at least
not entirely. There are a few not moderate Republicans who are quite decent people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can, find common ground with them.
Yes, you can, but there's just, you need every one of them, and that's rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some very, very nice people among those moderate Republicans.
Right.
And of course, COVID has thrown a big monkey wrench into everything, right? Because the usual process of having going out, for drinks or whatever, where you can, kind of relate to people as human beings, which I thought would be my forte as a rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
It just hasn't happened.
Sure. Yeah.
So haven't had that opportunity. I haven't. So for the last 2 weeks, I've been showing up live rather than on Zoom.
Okay.
And that has helped a lot.
Mm.
More and more people are vaccinated. It's getting a lot safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on, but it sounds like I hope I've thoroughly depressed everybody enough into saying, hey, I'm going to run.
Yes.
And I'm going to take it seriously.
Yes.
And if the answer is not to write letters to your representative. I don't need your letters. I know where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to convince any Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Take the time, figure out who in your community can win these seats. Mm-hmm. and start planning a strategy for that. That's the only way we're going to change this.
Yeah. All right. Well, you heard it here. Rabbi Ed Stafman, Representative Stafman, wants you as a colleague in the next session. So
absolutely.
Run for office. He needs you. We all need you. Whoever you are, raise your hand, step into the arena. We welcome you into it, and you have support. So with that, thank you, Representative Stafman, for being with us tonight. Please take care of yourself. I hope you get that Bridger pass or, reservation so that you can, get some skiing in, when the break happens. And we'll hopefully see you also during a transmittal break update where we have a Zoom Zoom conversation with more people. So we hope to do that. But thank you for your time.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
Keep up the good work back home.
Yeah, we will. You too. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.